All right, folks, it's story time because in the early decades of the 17th century, the Dutch Republic entered a golden age of independence and commercial wealth. So, as disposable income grew, there was a whole new class of wealthy merchants, and they were searching for ways to display their status while still honoring Protestant ideals of modesty. Quite the dynamic to try and thread the needle on. Well, they found the perfect symbol in a single flower with a striking pattern, the Semper Augustus tulip. So by 1636, demand for this rare white and crimson bloom had reached just huge, astonishing heights, and one bulb was rumored to have sold for 10,000 guilders. You ever use your guilders? It was a sum large enough to buy a grand house along Amsterdam's finest canal. And you probably know the story that comes next. So, according to the classic version of events, Dutch society collectively lost its mind. From wealthy merchants to chimney sweeps, people supposedly liquidated their entire life savings to trade flower bulbs. That's quite the bubble, right? So, this was a massive financial bubble. And then, in February 1637, that bubble violently burst. Thousands of speculators were ruined overnight, plunged the entire Dutch economy into a devastating depression. And for centuries, this tale of irrational crowd behavior has been taught as the ultimate warning for modern financial markets. But there's a pretty big but here. When modern economists and historians finally examined the actual 17th century notary records and auction data, that familiar story began to unravel really quickly. The records revealed something very surprising. The crash of 1637 left almost no one bankrupt. The broader Dutch economy continued expanding without a single measurable disruption. Economist Peter M. Garber looked at the data. All the surviving egregious prices were actually the product of perfectly rational economic market factors. If the economy remains stable, that raises a pretty intriguing question. How could a microscopic plant virus help create a market that convinced the world it had gone mad for nearly 400 years? So let's try to break that down. Because to understand the pricing, we need to first look at the biological reality behind those really prized broken tulips and their dramatic flame-like patterns. These beautiful streaks of contrasting color were not a genetic trait. They were the visible symptom of a pathogen now known as the tulip-breaking virus. And while the virus produced stunning visual variations, it also weakened the bulb itself. Infected plants reproduced slowly, and each new generation declined further in quality. So 17th century breeders had no understanding of viruses. They relied entirely on chance, hoping to discover a broken bulb in their fields. As a result, the supply of these specific patterns were unpredictable and extremely limited. The extraordinary prices seen during the period reflected the natural economic value of something that's hyper rare, biologically constrained, and fragile luxury good. So, in fact, rapid price depreciation for a prized new flower variety is kind of a normal pattern in the bulb industry. When a unique bulb first appears, it commands a huge premium. As it reproduces over time, supply increases, prices fall. Garber's chart follows the Semper Augustus across several years of rising prices. Professional growers understood that their investments would eventually depreciate and priced contracts accordingly. The evidence after the collapse makes this clear. Years after the 1637 crash, rare bulbs still sold for hundreds of guilders, declining at normal annual rates. The true mania phase was actually super quick, very brief. Non-professional traders only entered the futures market to speculate on common, uninfected bulbs during the final months of winter in 1637. So, seen in the light of February 1637, the correction was a localized and short-term adjustment within the specific futures market, far too small to threaten the national economy. So if the broader economy emerged completely intact, then another question naturally follows. Where did the story of this financial apocalypse come from? Most modern accounts can be traced to a brief description in Charles Mackay's 1841 book on popular delusions, which helped spread the now famous narrative of mass hysteria. But Mackay never verified the economic evidence himself. Instead, he borrowed heavily from deeply biased 17th century pamphlets built on hearsay, moral lessons, and dramatization. Those pamphlets were a form of moralizing propaganda, written by conservatives who viewed the rising merchant class with suspicion. So, in a society where a person's word was considered a sacred bond, refusing to honor bulb contracts was portrayed as shocking, like collapse of Dutch virtue. So, in that sense, Tulip Mania was less of an economic disaster and more of a cultural crisis of trust and reputation. The story survived for centuries because of the moral warnings, and those were eventually mistaken for economic history warnings. So the ultimate symbol of wealth, the Semper Augustus, easily outlived the panic, but it cannot outlive its own biology. The very virus that gave the flower its extraordinary beauty and its immense value, well, that also guaranteed its extinction. With each new generation, the infected bulbs became weaker and more degraded until they could no longer bloom at all. Eventually, the genetic line disappeared entirely, leaving the Semper Augustus alive only in oil paintings. And perhaps that is the final lesson of Tulip Mania. Popular economic parables deserve the same scrutiny as any historical claim. What appears to be a collective madness is often something far more complex, a handful of real data points buried beneath centuries of moralizing fiction. If you found this interesting, click on the links below to more really interesting reads about this and other economic fallacies. We'll catch you in the next video.